Hello, wherever you're tuning in from. This is Talk to Ssbc with me, Tech Stephen Ugut. In this edition, I'm glad to be joined by the General Manager of South Sudan Pension Fund, that is Honorable Nul Jacob Mayendit, as well as Kenneth Loboka, the Manager for Pension Operation at South Sudan Pension Fund. Gentlemen, thank you very much for giving us your time and being part of this program, and also for participating in this episode to explain more about South Sudan Pension Fund and how it operates. Perhaps I will start with the General Manager to tell us briefly about South Sudan Pension Fund. When was it established and what is the core value?
Thank you so much, Tech. It's a privilege that we have you in our premises and also to have an explanation of what South Sudan Pension Fund is, and also we want to inform our viewers and the beneficiaries themselves, which is the civil servants, in other words, the employees of the government of South Sudan across the country. And next to me is the manager for operations, who is a technical person at the same time. South Sudan Pension Fund, Pension Fund itself has been around this country for quite some time, since 1904. That's when it was established in the Sudan by that time, and it operated in southern Sudan then as a department. And then the same time, also 1972, in the Addis Ababa Agreement 1972, it operated as a department in the southern Sudan. But it has its own head offices in Khartoum. And it comes during the CPA, we also operated partially in the Sudan, and it became as an independent authority in 2012, which was the time that it was enacted as an independent institution. And I am the fourth general manager in this organization. And so that's how we came to be. We are an independent institution that is a custodian of the deductions from the employees in the government, and we manage these funds. We are the trustee for the deductions from the contribution from the employees in the government of South Sudan.
Well, you've told us that this institution indeed predates the independence of this country, yeah. And now that was about the establishment. Perhaps I will ask Kenneth also to tell us from the technical point of view, how does South Sudan Pension Funds operate?
Thank you, Stephen. It is actually a privilege for me to speak today on pension fund. Actually, South Sudan Pension Fund was enacted immediately after the establishment of South Sudan Pension Fund Act 2012 and Civil Service Pension Scheme Act 2013. It was signed by the President, and it gives us now the privilege to establish and also to implement this law. As a result, before that, we were actually in the Ministry of Public Service and Manpower. And then we were brought here now after that in 2017. But in 2014, the board members were actually appointed so that they oversee how this place can be run. And after that, the general manager was appointed by the board members. And then we as the technical people came in 2017 to start implementing the law. And this institution is particularly for the government employees, civil servants, excluding the private sectors, Bank of South Sudan, Employees Justice, and the constitutional post holders. So we are purely dealing with the government employees. So it was established during that time.
Good.
Yes.
Let's take it one step at a time so
Okay.
that our viewers will get the whole depth of what we want to talk about.
Okay.
We'll talk about, as you mentioned, that you're only dealing with the public service servant. We'll talk about that in a minute, but perhaps I would like to ask the general manager to tell us about, you told us you are the fourth general managers of this institution since it was established. Being new to this institution, you just came recently. What do you put as your priority plan in improving the work of this institution?
Thank you so much. Pension, the most important thing is when you have the data of the contributors, who are the civil servants, put in place in what they call pension information management system, such that, and have it interface with human resource information system from the public service. And so when I came, I got there were servers here, which is called the PIMS, that's Pension Information Management System, that has not been operationalized. So my first task when I came to the office was to operationalize this machine, and we interface it with the Ssbc, that is South Sudan Electronic Payment System in the Ministry of Public Service, which is operational now. That we are able now to see, like if the salaries are issued out today, we'll be able to see of how much was supposed to be deducted from the civil servants and which is supposed to be remitted in our block account. It's one step that I had to operationalize it because it was not there, although it was procured in 2012, but it was not put into use. So I make sure that we have that system in place, and that's what we did. And also we have to recruit the human resource, people who are capable, because as my colleague put it, it was a department within public service and human resource development. So when they came here, other departments were somehow defunct. So we make sure that other departments were now established, like the procurement. We also have to put in some policies. We develop policies and procedures to operate the organization. Yeah.
And this being a new institution as of the independence of this country, not the institution as, because you mentioned earlier that it predates the independence, but since it started operating in South Sudan, has public servants that are beneficiaries of this pension, they started receiving their pension money, that is those who have already gone for retirement age. Have you started paying pensioners and the survivors as well, of those who are eligible for this pension? And perhaps maybe you can also clarify the pension system. If the pensioner or the person eligible for the pension dies, does the pension that he's supposed to get ends, or how does it operate exactly?
Yeah, for how do we pay the survivors, how do we pay, that one will come to the technical person. But I want to make a brief elaboration about when I came to the office, how many we pay and who is eligible. Actually, South Sudan Pension Fund is trying to take care of about 95% of the former employees in the Sudan, because the employees that got recruited by the government of Southern Sudan in 2006, up to now, majority of them have not yet gone for retirement. And so, based on the CPA and other framework agreement, when we separated from the Sudan, we have a huge number of the former employees in the Sudan that the law, according to the act, we were supposed to take care and compensate them. And those are the majority that we are servicing by now. We've settled files of about 479 that we are giving compensation on monthly basis. And the rest, we are trying to settle their files. The unsettled files are those files whose owners have not yet come and clarify and give evidence whether they are the owners of the files and get settled in our system. And so the few that are being serviced by pension fund now from South Sudan now are very few, about 34 to 35, like that. And so that's the management we're putting in place. And of course, as a new phenomena in South Sudan, the pension itself is an old stuff. People know it, but the South Sudanese, the employees, majority of them do not even know And so it's a new thing, and that's why we're having these campaigns every other time, so that we inform people that South Sudan Pension Fund exists, and it is where you go next after the retirement. And we're having their money, the deductions being kept with us, and we're managing some of it. We've invested some of the money, we're keeping some of the money for them, awaiting for them when they get retirement.
And maybe before I go to Kenneth for a technical explanation, let me just ask you a little bit further to clarify, because the pension that your institution is collecting, I believe in South Sudan, begins from 2011-2012.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier that a large number of South Sudanese public servants were working in Sudan,
Yeah.
all Sudan by then. In the process of identifying the right eligible people, that
Right.
means it also involves transferring their files from Sudan, Pension Fund in Khartoum, to South Sudan. Has this process been completed of transferring those files to your institution?
I think my colleague will be able to take it from there, because he's well conversant with that. Thank you.
Well, I think maybe I'll now refer this to Kenneth to clarify
Yeah.
that.
Okay, thank you very much. To begin with, I think let me inform the public that South Sudan Pension Fund is currently functional. It is working, because we are hearing a lot of rumors that South Sudan Pension Fund is not functioning. But actually we are functioning at its initial base. We actually in South Sudan Pension Fund started paying pensioners, because we have the existing pensioners who are by then getting their pension in Sudan, whereby others are getting here during that time in South Sudan, in the 3 regional offices of Juba, Wau, and Malakal. These people, we went to the media, informed them that they are to come, because according to the law, they are the first people to be paid first. So we informed the public that all the pensioners and the survivors should come to South Sudan Pension Fund with all their eligible documents, so that we can identify them, register them, and pay them their rights. And this we have done. Many have come, and also many have not turned up. So still, I can announce that any person who was receiving pension by then, during that time, should come to South Sudan Pension Fund, so that we register him and pay him his money. That's what. We actually have launched South Sudan Pension Fund in 2019. And from that time, we put our plan forward. The first is to see into it that these pensioners are paid. And we made assessment of the pensioners here in Juba. And we even sent people to the state so that they can be assessed. Any person who have not registered must be registered so that he is paid.
Okay, let's take it one step. You said you have started paying pensioners.
Yes.
When exactly did you begin, which year? And in terms of the ratio, how many people have started now receiving pension in South Sudan, in terms of, if you put it in percentage?
Yeah, this is actually what I can say now. As I told you, that we launched in 2019. And by then there were few people, because they are coming every now and then. But up to current, the people we have received are over 400. And the people who were actually found in the pay sheet of previous Sudan was about 1,400, which means most of the people have not yet reported. And this is why we are actually informing the public. So, the payment is going on for those whom we have accessed. And those whom we have not accessed, we cannot pay you because we don't know where you are. So let them come and then we pay them.
Maybe let's throw this to the general manager. This needs an intensive campaign by South Sudan Pension Fund, because as he mentioned, South Sudanese are still not one, not informed about pension fund being operational, and sorry, and two, most people still don't even understand the meaning of pension in itself, most South Sudanese. What is the level of campaign that your institution is doing to ensure that the people of South Sudan, especially at the grassroots level, at the state, at county and payams, can understand the meaning and the value of pension fund so that they can come and register and benefit from this? What is the campaign that you are doing?
Thank you so much, Tech. You know, it's a bit controversial because once a civil servant, you know your right because it's a constitutional right. And once you've worked with the ministry or any other stakeholder, you know that at the end of the day, in your pay sheet, there's a column for pension. And the reason why we have over 1,000 South Sudanese who are supposed to be pensioned, who are supposed to come for their pension. Actually, they've been sent for retirement by the Sudan government. And up to now, some of them have not come. My understanding is that it is either this population is still being serviced, is being compensated in the Sudan, or some of them have entered into the payroll in the government of South Sudan now. Because if you know you're retired and you cannot follow up your file, it is either you are working, which contradicts the law because you cannot be compensated when you're still on a job, because there are a couple of few others who are retired by the Sudan government, and when they come to South Sudan government, they also got a job. So there you cannot come and collect your file and then you also go for the benefits. So it's one of the reasons. This one do not, because if you are retired and you're not on a job, you definitely go for pension. So the campaign should be a mild campaign because it is a right. Just like when you're working, you know when they're giving the salaries. But we're making sure that other areas where the media do not reach, like in all the 10 states, we've moved for the last 4 months. We've been moving in all the 10 states, and that is literally a campaign. We pass out messages to the state coordinators to inform people, and just the same message because this is how far we could do it. We've done it in newspapers, we've done it on TV, just like Ssbc is now covering it. So that's how far our campaign is concerned. But that is what we suspect, that others are being serviced in the Sudan, and therefore they could not even come here because that would be double standard, and we will not permit that as we do the screening.
And what is the retirement age in South Sudan?
The retirement age in South Sudan, according to the Act, is up to the age of 65. And when you are at 60 and then you don't have the energy to exert on a job, you can still be pensionable, and then you can still retire. You can request for retirement, actually.
Yes. You mentioned that some people have reached retirement age or have been sent to retirement,
Yes.
but since they are not coming to follow their files, that means they are either working,
Yes.
which is illegal.
Yes.
So in such a case where someone is retired and is supposed to be on pension but is still in the government file being enrolled, what do you do to such situation? And how do you identify and clarify this issue? Maybe I can throw this to
Kenneth. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Actually, as he has mentioned that maybe other people have got job and they're working somewhere. Actually, in real sense, when you are working, we don't pay you pension. But after retirement, we pay you. This means that for those people who have retired and have not reported, and they are still working, maybe later on they will come also to demand for this. This one, we shall not entertain it, because you have already your pension, and we shall determine how you are appointed there. Is it on continuous service or not? If it is on continuous service and the pension deduction of that particular person is coming to our end, then we shall add the period that he has served before and then the new one, and we recalculate it for him so that he get the right he won.
Yeah, and in general, the pension that you are paying the pensioners is a fraction that is deducted from them throughout their lifetime. which accumulates to what you end up paying them as a pension when they go for retirement, correct?
Yes.
Yes, and I would also now like to go deeper into those who are eligible. You mentioned a little bit earlier that it only applies to public servants. Would like to hear about what is the fate of those who are in the private sector, the organized forces, and the other fields that you mentioned earlier. But maybe before that, let's go for a short break.
Okay,
and when we come back, we'll explore more on this.
Good.
We are going for a short break. Stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back, and we are discussing in this edition about South Sudan Pension Fund and what they're doing to improve this institution and to improve the life of those who are in retirement and those who are supposed to benefit from pension. And with me is the General Manager of South Sudan Pension Fund, Noel Jacob Mayendit, and the Manager for Pension Operation at South Sudan Pension Fund, Kenneth Loboka. Welcome back to the program, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Before the break, I wanted to ask you guys about the eligibility, that you also shed a little bit of light on it when we were starting the program, that it applies only to the public servants. Now, what is the fate of other people who are working in other institutions or other sectors like the private sector? You mentioned also that it doesn't apply to central bank. How can these people benefit from their long time of service?
Okay. First of all, we are talking of eligibility or pension.
Yes.
Eligibility or pension actually depend. For example, with us here in civil service pension scheme, when somebody retired, then it means he takes his pension. But maybe after short time he died. Then it means to whom are we going to pay this pension, monthly pension? We have to ask the family members. And the family members will report to us. And not all the family members will receive this pension of the late. First, the people who are eligible to receive the pension of survivors, let me say the survivors, are actually the widow or widows or widows. If the widow is there, she is to receive 50% of the total pension. And then the children who are actually below 21 years old, these children will receive actually 30% of the total pension of the late person. And then the parents, if at all they are still there, they are also eligible to receive the pension of the late, and they are given 20%, which means 10% to the mother, 10% to the father. So these are the eligible survivors that can get pension. In regard to the question of the private sectors and all that, actually, surely this one is only for civil servants. And it is through the ministerial order to the public service that civil service pension scheme and the South Sudan Pension Fund must be established separately. And the private sectors have to establish to be under the social insurance fund, in which this social insurance fund up to now has not yet been established. I was a focal person in drafting the law. And we did it. It was sent to the Ministry of Justice, and the Ministry of Justice called even for me so that we go and make correction. It was corrected, and then they are supposed to send it to the Parliament. But unfortunately, during the time, the government, the parliamentaries are not yet selected. So up to now, we don't know where it ended. For me, actually, particularly, I don't know where it has ended. But I believe it must be with the with the National Assembly now. and it will come out. Then they will have their own scheme. And then for Bank of South Sudan and other small schemes, they said they are going to establish their own. This is the answer actually when we were establishing the pension with the experts of South Sudanese and also foreigners. We had actually foreigners consultant who we were working together. So for these people, they are to establish their own pension scheme. Like the military, they are establishing their own. And even that of the military is not yet out. During that time, they even called for us so that how to tell them how it is to be established. And we did during that time when we were in public service. So we are expecting this private sector's pension scheme to come out with their laws so that they can operate. But here in South Sudan Pension Fund and the Civil Service Pension Scheme, we also can allow the other private pension scheme. If they are unable to establish, they can join us and we can accommodate them here according to the law. So this is how things should go.
Yes, it's now appear clearly that from your explanation that the pension, the South Sudan Pension Fund applies only to civil servants, and as a result, the other institution like Central Bank that you just mentioned, they have requested for their own method of pension fund, just like the organized forces and the rest.
Exactly.
General Manager, I'm sure there are a lot of challenges facing these institutions. How do you resolve them in the best way?
Thank you so much, Tech. We have several challenges, and one of them is no remittance to the contribution. Most of these funds, unfortunately, are being misused by the politicians. And one thing that I also need to inform the viewers and probably the politician that would be watching is that that contribution is what we call defined contribution. It is not government's money. It is the civil servants' money. It's money that they get off from their salary, their basic salary. And it is what they kept for their future. And future that when they are unable to work anymore, they don't have enough energy, and they will not be hired to work anymore. So it's where they get back and consume that. And the fraction is that the employee who is a civil servant contribute 5% of the total salaries. And then the employer, which is the ministry, commission, or any other parastatal, contributes 11%. So we have a total of 16% that is supposed to be deducted each pay, each monthly salaries released. And that money is supposed to be sent to the pool, which is called block account of South Sudan Pension Fund with the South Sudan Central Bank. So the challenge is that this money keep delaying, and we have the arrears since 2006. When you go to states, most of the states, of the 10 states, have about almost 0% contribution sent to the central bank, which is very dangerous. And the same to the ministries in the central government. We also have challenges because what we receive at some point is a lump sum, which at some point you will not even be sure. I also want to take you through that the pension contribution is just like the account in the bank. Like when you go to any commercial bank, deposit your money, and then I go and deposit my money. So at the end of the day, when you want to withdraw, you go and withdraw your money. You don't withdraw mine. It's the same thing with pension contribution. It is a defined contribution. Defined contribution, it's a contribution cut out of my efforts. So now we have a number of people that we're compensating from the states, and yet their contribution has not been remitted into a central block account. So it's one of the challenges that we have. So politicians interfere with that. Sometimes they delay to pay, but according to the act, until next month we will now be able now to put penalties because that's what the law says. Because if the salaries are released this month, today, and then tomorrow the block account has to be furnished with the contributions. So that's one of the biggest challenge that we have. Another challenge we have is, as I mentioned earlier, that the majority of the people that we're compensating in this organization are people that were formerly working in the Sudan. And their contribution has not been remitted. The money has not been transferred to Central Bank of South Sudan. I found my predecessor trying to put an effort to get the money back to South Sudan, but it was very difficult. I also tried at my capacity, and it's proving a little bit difficult because Sudan has been unsettled for the last few months. And so it's a challenge that we're now dishing out the contribution of the people who are working in South Sudan. We're putting it to the people that work in the Sudan. And I found the policy was dictating towards that direction. So it's one of the challenges that we have. Another challenge we have is also, the hyperinflation in the country. Because the first mandate of pension was to invest, to establish a prudent investment, to take this money, put it in investment to generate more revenues. So by the time a civil servant retires, should not find the same amount of money contributed when he or when she was working. And so we want to avoid being the people that were referred in the Bible, that were given a coin, and then they went and dashed that coin. Two people were given. One person kept the money, and the other person went and invested the money. So we want to be the other person, not the person that kept the money. But the inflation has tightened our hands because the pounds keep depreciating against dollar each time. So those are the few challenges that we have.
And yes, as you mentioned, basically how the pension operates has no difference with the bank. So what you keep, what you deposit is what you withdraw in the future. But you mentioned also earlier that you have started paying pensioners. Considering the fact that you are saying that there is no pension being remitted by the concerned ministries that has employees, then where do you get the money to pay the pensioners?
I want to make it a bit clearer. We said there is late remittance or no remittance at all. The Ministry of Finance makes deduction according to the law. It makes deduction for the civil servants working in the central government, and that's the funds that comes to block account. Still, that fund is not yet clear. Is it 5% of the employees, or it is 11%, or it is both? Because it comes as lump sum. Because it's supposed to be a deduction of each and every employee that is being paid that particular month. And then we're supposed to have the name of the people that are paid that. We are not getting that. We get it as a lump sum. So it gives us hard time to identify how many people would have. Probably we are getting only a contribution of 25 people that gets to a block account. So that is the one challenge that we're getting. States, there are few states that have tried their best, especially Warab, and I must mention, and the governor of Warab should be very proud of this, that they have been remitting since 2006. Although they have some arrears, simply because we do not know whether they pay only 5%, which is the employer's contribution, or the 11%, which is the employees, the 11%, which is the employee's contribution, or 5% of which is supposed to be the employer's contribution. But at least they've tried their best. They've been remitting into block account. That is Warab state. So there is that little contribution that comes in that we are trying to compensate the population, which has now been authorized to be paid.
Yes, and Kenneth, what the general manager is saying are a lot of challenges that are affecting this institution. And in my opinion also, I believe some way or better ways of improving or ratifying these issues is to go back to the laws that are governing this institution. So what are the laws that are favoring the proper implementation of how South Sudan pension fund is supposed to operate so that such issues can be best resolved?
Yes. To begin with, actually, there are laws that we are dealing with. First, the establishment, we refer to Constitution of South Sudan that give us power to establish South Sudan Pension Fund. And then when we were given this, an establishment is made. This means that the other law that we use also here is South Sudan Pension Fund. And South Sudan Pension Fund is actually the overall body of all other pension schemes like ours currently, the civil service pension scheme. It is the overall body. And this actually, they are overseeing how these other schemes are established. And it's the responsibility of the board of trustees that we have here to see into it that private sectors have their pension and other institutions. And this is actually well spelled in South Sudan Pension Fund. And the other one that we are actually governing as technically is the Civil Service Pension Scheme Act 2013. This is a technical part of it whereby we are allowed to be independent and also to collect pension deduction and government contribution to our fund. It also permits us to calculate and make payment to the pensioners and survivors. The other law actually is the law that gives all people all over the world the rights to have pension. And that one is actually the United Nations Fund Law number 102. It gives the right to the people so that they are given their right. And then we have also other laws, let me say like the regulation for pension that govern even the employees here, like the employees' term of service. We have it here so that we are governed by those laws. So these are actually the laws that permit us to work efficiently here.
Yes, and apparently because time is running, maybe I'll just give you guys a few, probably 1 minute or so, to give you closing remarks as we conclude this program. And maybe I will begin with you and conclude with the General Manager. Your final words as we conclude.
Okay, my final word actually to the public is that pension is operational now. Let them come. Those who are retired, let the file be sent to South Sudan Pension Fund. This one. Two, I'm informing also the public that, especially the states, that the pension contribution must come fully here. It must be 5% and 11% making 16%. This is the amount of money that we need, because we discovered that in other states they are only sending 5%, leaving the government contribution. And this government contribution is their responsibility in the state. When they are making their budget, they must include the 11% so that all money can come. And for this matter, I would say, let them see into it that their employees are given their rights. Because otherwise, if things are not going well, even maybe we can even sue them to the court.
So your point is remittance of these funds,
Yes.
both the employees and the government's contribution, which is 5 and 11 to make it 16.
Yes.
And General Manager, your takeaway points.
Thank you so much, Tech. My takeaway point is it's a message to the politicians, and particularly the Ministry of Finances of all the 10 states, and probably the politicians, the governors, to look into this. It is a responsibility. It is an obligation of the leaders that you take care of your citizens, because if you make them eat their future now, it is it's going to be a big question to the legacy. And my appeal still is in line with my colleague. that by law, the states are not supposed to retain the deductions, which is contribution, with them in their block accounts. That is a legal mistake. It is wrong. It's supposed to be remitted into block account, because I hear that there are some politicians that ask that, we fear to remit to South Sudan Pension Fund because it can be misused. Well, if it is misused here, the law will ask the right person. But if it is kept with your block accounts, the law wrongfully will ask you, because you're a wrong person keeping wrong funds with you. So let the right fund goes to the right account, and then do the right thing, because it is an obligation to the citizens. It is something that will haunt people that go away with it and then they misuse this fund, because it is a human right, it is a constitutional right of the employees to receive their funds when they retire. That is my message.
Well, with that, I would like to thank you all very much. Honorable Nul Jacob Mayendit, the General Manager for South Sudan Pension Fund, and Kenneth Loboka, the Manager for Pension Operation at also South Sudan Pension Fund. Thank you all for giving your time to talk to SSBC and explain how this institution operates. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And this brings us to the end of this program. I have been your host, Tech Stephen Ogut, wishing you a very good time.